going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Sick Podcast. Steelers crazy. We're excited. Football is back. We've waited roughly 2 weeks at this point. Obviously, Steelers were on a bye last week, and we have a great guest today to break down their upcoming contest against the New Orleans Saints. First, I'll introduce my guy over here, Jordan York at Jordan York Music, repping the T-shirt of a guy we're hopefully looking forward to seeing this Sunday, right?
Yeah, man. TJ Watt, the time's back to NFL. Get ready, baby. He's back.
Yeah, we're excited about that. You got me this T-shirt for my birthday. It's a George Pickens. He got that dog in him shirt. I had to rep it today. It's got the number 14 in the left corner here. We're obviously going to see a lot more Pickens post-Chase Claypool trade, so everybody's excited about that. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of DMs and tweets saying, where the heck did you get that? Sure.
Thanks to our friend over on Instagram, man, for sending that and listening to the podcast, man. We appreciate it.
Randomly, that's for sure. All right, we have another great podcast host joining us in just a few seconds here. He is a New Orleans Saints podcast host. We'll bring him in after this. Go ahead, Sammy, run it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Aaron Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
And he's a digital producer over at WWLA-FM. He also hosts the Inside Black and Gold podcast. No, it is not a Steelers podcast, for what it's worth. He's Saints guru Jeff Nowak. Jeff, we'll start with that. Not a Steelers podcast. You said you're passionate about this. The Inside Black and Gold podcast.
Okay, so this is also, you were talking about shirts. So I actually just recently partnered with a company that's supposed to send me samples, and then I wear them, and then I raffle them off and all that. But they messed up, and they actually, and this, I'm not kidding, this happened this week. They sent me, instead of a Saints shirt, they sent me a Steelers shirt.
Oh, man.
No way.
Yeah, it's not even because like they're playing each other this week. It was just a weird mix-up. But the reason I show you this is because this color right here, that's yellow.
Shout out
Wiz Khalifa agrees with me. Okay, if you have a major song that associates you with black and yellow, I think that becomes difficult. But I understand it's a charged subject. But black and gold is the Saints.
You really missed the one opportunity to wear that shirt. This was it. Because I don't think you're going to be wearing it very often, at least not this Sunday, of course, as we're excited to pick your brain about this New Orleans Saints team. A matchup of struggling teams. You got 3-6 versus 2-6. First and foremost, we watched that game on Monday night, of course, a tough loss to the Baltimore Ravens. I saw on your Twitter that you had a therapy session or something of that nature for Saints fans. So what went wrong and kind of what's the vibe in NOLA right now around this team?
Yeah, so that's really when they lose, I call it a therapy session. When they win, I call it a recovery session. Basically, it's just our post-game podcast. But yeah, I felt like they needed some therapy after that game because it's just, there's so many times this year where the Saints team kind of feels like they're turning things around and they figure something out. You go and you blank the Raiders. Like, bad teams don't shut other teams out. I don't care how bad they are. Shutouts are incredibly difficult to get in football. And you turned around from shutting out the Raiders and looking excellent in all three phases to getting just slapped around in all three phases against the Ravens. And, it's been the story of this team. There's a lot of questions around the coaching staff. The Saints decided to go with continuity. They hired Dennis Allen, who was the defensive coordinator, as the head coach. Pete Carmichael stayed as the offensive coordinator. They have co-defensive coordinators in Chris Bouchard and Ryan Nielsen, who were, the defensive line coach and the secondary coach from last season. But this defense has taken a significant step back. And so you look at it and you say, well, if continuity was the goal and the idea was, well, you can sustain and improve, that experiment has failed. So I think there's a lot of frustration around this team right now. But being in the NFC South at this point, anything is possible. So that's the only thing keeping hope alive in New Orleans right now, I think.
Yeah, I think a recipe, obviously, to playing better defense might be a matchup against arguably the worst offense in the league. We'll get to that coming up. First, I want to ask you a little bit about Andy Dalton. Jordan and I are super familiar with Mr. Andy Dalton, obviously a member of the Cincinnati Bengals for most of our lifetime.
Yeah.
The Steelers, generally dominated this guy during his time with the Bengals. First, I have to ask, just what have your impressions been of him? Obviously, he's played fairly well. Is this fool's gold once more, like we kind of saw previously, maybe with Dallas a little bit, with Chicago a little bit? Why Andy Dalton and not Jameis Winston right now?
Well, so first things first, obviously Jameis got hurt, right? So he played in week 1. He suffered a significant back injury. He tried to play through it in weeks 2 and 3. He also suffered a foot injury in week 2. And so these injuries, while he's healthy enough to play right now, they would still be a factor, right? You would still be cringing every time he takes a big hit in the pocket, and he is going to be limited in terms of what he can do. So that's the reason you went with Andy Dalton in week 4 and you kept him in there. And then beyond that, I think it's really more about consistency. Now, remember, Dennis Allen is a defensive head coach, and this is an offense that, while it didn't look good last week, has been averaging 28 points a game and is ranked in the top 10 in the NFL. So for him, it's about hitting a benchmark on offense so he can focus on defense. And turning to Jameis Winston in that moment because of a struggle because of struggles in week 8 or week 9 would just seem reactive, and it would just introduce a new variable that he doesn't want to have to deal with, which is the offense. So that's why you have Andy Dalton in there now. And I think he has been consistent. Like, you can say a lot of things. I think he has a much lower ceiling, but he has a much higher floor. This is supposed to be a team that can win on defense. And the issue, frankly, hasn't been the offense for the majority of this season. It's been the defense.
Yeah, best player over there on offense, I think everyone would agree, is Alvin Kamara. I have Kamara rostered on multiple fantasy teams, so I have to ask you about him. I get one game of 35 points from Kamara, and then I get a game with 2 points, and then I get a game with 67 points, and then I get a game with -7 points. Why the Jekyll and Hyde nature so far?
Well, and I said this going in, you should have asked me before the season. So there's a reason you should have drafted Alvin Kamara, which is he's not going to get suspended this season. And I think that dropped his fantasy stock down to a point where it made sense to draft him. And you're probably not as mad as you would be otherwise, because you probably got a discount on him in the first place, because they're going to drag that court case out until next season. That was a planned thing, and it was kind of you could have projected that prior to the season if you were looking closely. In terms of the numbers, now, one of the reasons I told people to take Taysom Hill with their final pick in the draft was because he's going to be the nightmare for any Alvin Kamara fantasy owner, because he's going to vulture touchdowns in the red zone. He has 7 touchdowns through 9 games, which is crazy for a guy who's only on the field for 20% of the snaps. But it is directly impacting Alvin Kamara's fantasy value. Now, in real life, Alvin Kamara has been a very, very useful and important piece for this team. Against the Seahawks, he didn't score. He had almost 200 yards in that game. Like, he is picking up yardage, but it's the red zone touches that he hasn't been getting. And part of the reason is they've been scoring on first and second down in the red zone. They haven't needed him in the red zone. Against the Raiders, the first touch for Taysom Hill was a 7-yard run in the red zone down to the 2-yard line. Well, so the difference is he didn't score on that play. So Alvin got the touch and he got in the end zone, and then he kind of got in a roll and scored 2 more touchdowns. So, it's not really anything about what Alvin is doing. It's just opportunities, and you have a premier touchdown vulture. Kind of like, if you remember LeGarrette Blount with the Patriots, like, he wasn't that good in terms of being an every down runner, but he was going to score 12, 15 touchdowns a season, because anytime you got within the 10, he's just going to bowl over you. And that's kind of what you have with Taysom Hill, because he takes the snaps from the quarterback position. And that's a significant difference. So you have 10 blockers on the field. Whereas if you have a quarterback and a running back, you only have 9. So the numbers kind of dictate it. But yeah, that's the reason. Taysom Hill is the reason that Alvin Kamara has not been living up to your fantasy expectations, I think.
Maybe living in the moment a little bit. Struggled against the Ravens, but obviously game flow played a huge factor in that. You're listening or watching the Sick Podcast, Steelers Crazy. We're fortunate to be joined by Jeff Nowak right now. Before I turn it over to my guy, Jordan York, wanted to ask you a little bit about the Saints injury report. I saw some key names on that, including Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, Marshawn has been out since the game against the Seahawks. So that was week 6. The play got injured on. He was actually like, going outside of his own position and trying to get over the top because Tyler Lockett had won and he was trying to make a play on the ball. And he ended up taking a knee like right into the lower back. There's no pads there. And so he suffered a kidney injury. And anytime you suffer an injury to a major organ, you know that it was kind of a big deal. It's going to take a little longer. And so I don't expect to see him back this week. I think it's really more about getting cleared medically. And, Dennis Allen told us that it's a painful injury that he's trying to work back from. So I would be surprised to see him back, but there are a few other players. Pete Werner has been a star for this defense. He went out with an ankle injury. He wouldn't have practiced yesterday. They didn't actually have practice because it's a short week. But he would have been out. Andres Pete is injured, the starting left guard. Eric McCoy, the starting center, is out with an injury. There was one more. Marcus Davenport, the defensive end, went out with an injury too. So this is a team that is already banged up. You don't have Marshawn Lattimore. Mike Thomas is on IR. Jarvis Landry hasn't played the last 4 weeks. And then you add a lot of these injuries to it, and you add the fact that they're on a short week. And so, yeah, there's a lot working against the Saints on the injury front right now.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, talking about the injuries, talk about like on the Saints side, the keys to the game that you think that they need to contain in order to win this game. And then we're going to ask a couple questions that we always do when we have other team insiders. Again, we appreciate you coming on, but the black and gold, black and yellow thing, we're going to save that for another day. But yeah, just the keys to the game.
The keys to the game for the Saints offense or defense?
Both.
Okay. So on defense, when this team has thrived, it's been because the pass rush has been able to harass the quarterback in the pocket, and they are much better suited to handle a more pocket-bound quarterback than mobile quarterback. This defense, one of the things I've complained about is it doesn't have a lot of team speed on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the front seven. So when you are dealing with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, like Kyler Murray, like Jalen Hurts, they get eaten alive. I think Kenny Pickett, while mobile, I think kind of they match up better with him. So if they can generate pressure, I feel like that's going to work out in their favor because they do, even without Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo and Alante Taylor have been excellent. They're very much prototype press man corners, which is kind of how the Saints thrive on the outsides. So for the Saints to win this game, they need to harass Kenny Pickett all day and kind of make him uncomfortable because they are playing man. So if they allow him to stand in there, guys are going to come free, right? That's just kind of the deal with man. It's like eventually they're going to run away from you, and you have to win early and make sure the pass rush gets there. So that's the key on offense.
Yeah, talking about Kenny Pickett, I just seen something that the Saints were thinking about drafting him. He thought he might have been going there, and they said, is this like kind of a revenge game? He kind of just shrugged it off. But while we're on the Kenny Pickett subject, I thought that was pretty funny. But he really could have gone anywhere. I was shocked that he was still there, but anything can happen, man.
Yeah, he was their top-rated quarterback. That's what Dennis told us this week.
Yeah.
But clearly they didn't have a first-round grade on him. Because if you have a first-round grade in a quarterback and he's there, you're taking him.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't a team that felt comfortable at the quarterback position. They very much would have taken a quarterback if they had a first-round grade on him and he was there. So,
yes.
I don't know how much contact they had with Kenny Pickett, but I think the quarterback class this year was remarkably weak, just top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And and for just to kind of switch gears a little bit. So on the offensive side of the ball, it's very much about running the ball. They need to be able to establish the run. What they didn't do in week 9 was establish Taysom Hill, the runner, early in the game. Mm-hmm. They had a 3rd and 1 on the second drive, and all season we have seen them just load up with 10 blockers. Like, I'm not kidding. They just take everyone on the field, and they have them stand next to each other in a line, and they put Taysom Hill behind him, and they just snap it to him. He waits a second, finds a hole, and then dives through it. It's been like a programmed 4 to 5 yards and 3rd and short in the red zone. For whatever reason, they just decided not to do it. And I think the entire game plan kind of went haywire at that point because you kind of have this is an Andy Dalton offense. The margin is very narrow, and you just have to make sure you're within it. and they got outside of it very early in that game. So I think that is really just being able to impose your will on offense, because if you're unable to do that and you're unable to extend drives, this is a defense that's banged up. This is a defense that's a veteran group. There's a lot of older players. They get tired a lot more quickly, and especially when they're chasing around a mobile quarterback. So, I think just being able to extend drives for this team early in the game is going to be a big factor.
Most definitely. So I always ask when we have, other insiders on from other teams, just two questions to end it, and then we'll get you out of here. Again, we appreciate your time. The Saints will win if
they run for over 150 yards.
Wow, it's a big number.
Wow.
I guess with Taysom Hill included, that kind of
not just Alvin Kamara. Right, they need to combine for over
full.
150 yards rushing. I think they win this game.
700 yards rushing. They will definitely win the game.
And then the Steelers will win if
Kenny Pickett doesn't turn the ball over. That's been something like this Saints team. I think they are currently minus 11 in turnover margin. I'm pretty sure it's worse than the NFL. And in the games they have forced turnovers, they have typically won. And it's one of those kind of talking points that everyone says, but it changes games when you turn the ball over, and the Saints just haven't had any game-changing plays on defense. So if Kenny Pickett can avoid playing like a rookie and making rookie mistakes and turning the ball over and taking unnecessary losses, I think the Steelers can win this game, because the Saints team, frankly, is not very good. I mean, you don't get to 3-6 by accident. This is a bad team. I would say it's poorly coached, and the only teams they have beaten are the equally bad teams. So if the Steelers play like a well-coached team, which I think most Mike Tomlin teams, you could point to that and say it's a well-coached team, they can win the game.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also at home. So I think that it's going to be tough, because the Steelers can be, 2-12 going into Acrisure Stadium, and their people are going to be screaming their faces off and waving the towels. So, we appreciate the time. Mike, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
Of course. Give us the final score.
The final score.
Or where are you leaning? It's a little early.
I mean, I'm going to be a homer and say the Saints win this game, because I'm tired of watching losing football, and they need to win this game.
Hey, that's something that we could agree on this season. So it's mutual.
Well, see, but the Steelers are in much better shape because the Saints traded their first round pick. So there's no tank in this. Like, they need to compete. Yeah. And they're in a division where they are still a game out of first place. So I think at some point you're going to get to that. You're going to get to that level where these teams that are kind of on the fence are going to dip, and the Saints are going to benefit from that, because there's no benefit in losing. So, I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I would give it to the Saints like 17-14, somewhere in that range. I think the defense did figure some things out in week 9 that if you only looked at week 10, you would not believe that to be the case. But that Lamar Jackson matchup is just the worst of everything that the Saints team cannot handle. I don't think that's the case with the Steelers. So I think the defense has a good day.
He's the host of the Inside Black and Gold, not yellow, Black and Gold podcast. Find it on Apple, all podcast streaming outlets. He's nice enough to join us on the Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy. Jeff Nowak, thanks, dude. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Have a good one, man. Good luck Sunday.
All right, Jordan. We got about a minute left for us.
Yeah.
So let's knock out our predictions. I'll let you go first. What do you think is going to happen on Sunday? Maybe TJ Watt back. No Claypool, though.
Yeah, which, I really didn't like the Claypool trade. I think that, I think he's going to blossom in Chicago. But best of luck to him first and foremost. But yeah, I mean, I think it opens up more for Muth to get more active. I think it helps George Pickens become a number 1 receiver. Hopefully Deontay Johnson can show up too, man. Just the offense needs to click. Like I said, we talked to Worm on Tuesday. There he is. He is him, Mr. Pickens. So I would say final score, I would say 20-10. I think the defense plays well. I think that the offense, I really want to see them give Jaylen Warren more touches, because everyone's like, well, he comes in spurts. Well, you can bring him out there. We haven't seen anything from Najee. It's time, man. It's time to mix it up and see what's working. What do we have to lose at this point? That's how I look at it. But I think that they do win. It's going to be a beautiful fall day on Sunday, and Steelers are good at home. So they did it
I
to
hear
Tom
you.
Brady. So Saints, you're up next.
All right, I'm going to give us a clip to send this off so we have something to head into the weekend.
Okay.
And because of that, I got to show off this tremendous shirt. He got that dog in him. Number 14, George Pickens, is going to be the reason the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the New Orleans Saints this Sunday at Acrisure Stadium.
Hot take.
Pickens is going to score at least a touchdown. Wide receiver touchdowns for the Steelers this season are more rare than sunny days in Pittsburgh in November. So it just has not happened. Pickens is going to show that the Chase Claypool trade will not turn out
2 sacks from this guy.
It won't turn out to hamper Kenny Pickett's progression because this guy's going to get more opportunities. He's got that dog in him. The Steelers are going to play with energy this Sunday. They're going to have that dog in them. Woof, woof. They win 20-17. You heard it here first.
This is the Steelers Crazy Podcast. We thank you for tuning in. And just so you guys know, we're going to be giving you the best of the best Steelers insiders from number 95 himself every Tuesday. We have the reporters on. We have Mike. I'm JY, and we just thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe. It's free. Tell your friends. It's the number one place all year round. The Steelers Crazy Podcast, another sick production. We're getting a win on Sunday. Here we go, Steelers. We're turning it around. We're winning out. TJ Watt's back. Kenny Pickett's ready. Get your Super Bowl tickets. We'll see you next time on the Steelers Crazy Podcast. I'm JY. This is Mike. Sammy, roll it. Go Steelers.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.